I wanted to start this conversation with asking you about your decision to start making maternal ideology, and motherhood the focus of your work. When did that happen?
The earliest maternal work that I can trace back to would be Il Nido, which is Italian for the nest.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about an 8-foot in diameter nest made out of saplings and fabric and scraps, plastics and whatnot. And people could get in and interact with it. It was like a sunny fall day, but I was still breastfeeding, and so I breastfed Chloe, and then she fell asleep, and I kind of covered her up with my scarf, and she, I stepped back just to sort of engage with the audience, or, just to be a bystander, and people were saying, "Wow, it's so realistic." And then, of course, well, where's the mother? This just very, it was a pretty funny piece. But I do trace, that was probably my very first work in the maternal, not conscious of it, of course, but yeah.
So can we jump forward then to, in balance with, what I think is interesting is many people, which you've told me, assume the performance is over when you balance
when you find
everything,
balance, yeah.
And then it's actually not. So I wonder if you could talk about how that idea came to you, and also some of the other iterations of that performance.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite pieces. I think because it has so many different elements to it. The best way to talk about that is the first time that we did it. We had practiced getting the stuff on the seesaw and, what that felt like to be in this limbo spot or whatever, and getting to this not limbo, but equilibrium kind of thing. But I didn't know how it's going to end. And so that's whenever, when we were performing, quote unquote, for this small audience, we got to that point where pretty much everything was on the seesaw, and Chloe had her collection of items, which is always curated, self-curated by her, to be the things that she kind of does, or which is just like home, the things that she occupies herself with, in front of her on the seesaw. And she was playing with the littlest pet shops. And I said, "Chloe, are you okay? Do you want to come down?" And she said, "No, I'm fine." And I was like, "Okay, well, I guess that's when the performance will be over, is whenever she's ready to come down," which then became even sort of a greater metaphor for the maternal, or the experience, the subjective maternal, to where, as long as she's okay, I can continue my work. So that balance, that sort of maintenance of the balance, while there's still the micro movements that are very seldom seen live even, but I'm sweating bullets trying to sort of maintain these subtle movements of her reaching forward in the crate, and then me kind of counterbalancing to maintain that stasis. And so this became an annual performance. I remember the first time I did it, I was like, "Wow, this is really great. I had really great feedback, feels really good. How do I redo this piece ever?" How you can't. We were always different. We were always growing, changing, interests, sports, music, research, clothes, everything's always changing.
And so I think one of the things that was kind of surprising to me was how much stuff there was, like fruit and clothes, roller skates, a bike, and you never really pile all that stuff that you have. And I also felt like it was a very kind of interesting comment on what you're expected to have to raise a child in America.
Well, you didn't mention the box of wine, though.
Oh, right. I might not have noticed it because it might have been covered with stuff, but that's what helped.
Requirements
right,
for raising
for
children.
Raising children, exactly. and so then another thing you've done is a lot of pieces using clothing, and you had Cut from the Same, which was using your clothing. You also have a series of photographs where you're Chloe has dressed you up.
Right.
And
yeah.
then you also had a video piece where Chloe kind of crawled in and out of your sweater. She was still really little.
So the wood cutouts is called Cut from the Same, where I was literally, when I talk about stuff, holes and moments, one of the moments is folding laundry and realizing that my pants and her pants are the same, but hers are just miniature versions. And so that's what I did with the Cut from the Same, was literally take my version, trace it, cut it out with a jigsaw, her version, trace it, cut it out. And then the same with the imbalance width. I did the hot pink enamel on the edge of that inner edge of the Cut from the Same. Sharing Space was the video piece of her getting into my clothing. Kind of a birthing and rebirthing, which also came from a moment in Casa when it was cold and I had on a cardigan and she got into that sweater that I was wearing. And
right, while you were wearing it.
Yeah, while I was wearing it, right, because I was cold too.
Yeah.
She didn't bring a sweater, so we were sharing it. But then it's sort of like you take that moment, and she might have even said, Mom, this would be a really cool performance piece. Like, yeah, you're right. It would be. Let's take it to the studio and take some video of it and try it out. And so that's what Sharing Space ended up becoming. And it was just she and I in there with, like, the camera set to play on a pedestal and, and not anybody else. So some of the interactions that she has with the camera are not to the person behind the camera. It's just
her.
Being goofy.
You also had the piece where Chloe dressed you up and then you took photographs of that.
Yeah, and that was a sort of a departure because as she's getting older, we can't keep on doing the same work, obviously. And now even older than she was when she did that, is a whole nother layer. The idea was, spending time together. And it very much was a collaboration in the sense that I set up the system and then she enacted the system. So she had 1 hour to dress me, do my hair, do my makeup, and then I would run to the studio that I had set up with like a camera on a tripod and flick on the lights, hit the self-timer, take the picture, and then I'd run back home. But it was sort of this idea that sort of flipping that agency, where, again, back to the child to have full control over the mother, instead of the mother being like, you can't wear that, or you have to wear this, or get dressed, or whatever the case may be. But she then is dressing me almost as a life-size doll, but not only just like a friend, but more like it's mom.
So I wanted to talk about Fabric of Life, and then the installation that you did as part of the faculty show, which...
That's Motherload.
Motherload.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, if we could talk about because they're also... although you say that you are a person that has no veneer, that your work is rough. In fact, the work is really well crafted.
Thanks.
And you were a sculptor, MFA. That was so you really think a lot in 3 dimensions and think about how that work functions
structurally.
Yes, and so these are both like very, very monumental pieces.
Yeah, they can be. I think they respond to
this one
the scale.
certainly was. I mean, I have to say I loved it when I saw it. But
thanks, I love that too. I mean, the fact that gallery, that was the Columbus Cultural Arts Center, that had those poles in there inside their space. I think it was a former armory or something.
It was a former armory.
Yeah.
Yes.
So with that, I should also say that since grad school, not really having a studio space to work in, I have sort of deemed my practice more of a gallery practice rather than a studio practice. So I come up with these ideas, and then if I have the opportunity to present them or install them, then that becomes the practice of the artwork itself, is actually installing them in the gallery. And yeah, I think it was the largest at that time, which is 12 foot wide by like 13 or 14 tall or something. I mean, it was a pretty, like you said.
It was huge.
So these 2 pieces, I think, are a direct link from the imbalance width. I mean, the stuff on the seesaw moved from the seesaw to a pedestal for Symphony of the Domestic, which was a pedestal piece that had the projector on it. And then to Motherload, which were the floor-to-ceiling stacks. and then Fabric of Life.
Then I'm also thinking of the series you did called Without Chloe, because in many ways, a lot of your work deals with the materiality of what connects you, the actual literal physical stuff. So if you could explain that series and what it's about.
Those are like 18 by 24 inches, and there's a series of 5 or 6 of them that, I took photographs around my house and, the space of the domestic, and literally cut out anything, with an X-Acto blade, not Photoshop or anything like that, or, laser cut or anything. It was just a very tedious, hands-on sort of cutting out anything that was of Chloe, by Chloe, because of Chloe, or actually Chloe, or, anything that related to her presence, to show that through absence there was also presence.
However, now Chloe is 14.
Almost 15.
Almost 15.
We're talking 10 days away from 15.
Okay.
So we can almost say 15.
So Chloe is 15. And she is really separating from you. And so your work has taken a different turn.
Yeah.
And I've thought first, since I contributed to it, if you could talk about the book you did, A Blessing, a Wish, a Spell for the Next Generation. Again,
it's sort of one of those labors of love, but it's also the collaboration from, over 30 women from all over the world. It started off as me writing them a letter of invitation to participate, in which I requested, talking about coming of age rituals for girls all over the world. I asked these women to send some words. It could be a letter, it could be, a quote, it could be music, it could be, lyrics, it could be a spell, a wish, a prayer, a blessing. Whatever it was that they felt they wanted to give to a girl turning 13. They were told that I would be performing it live to my daughter, who would be turning 13 the very next day, which we were in Copenhagen for that. And so I had just wonderful feedback, letters just would pour in, into the mailbox. We'd get packages on the doorstep, and Chloe didn't want to know anything about it. She wanted it to be a surprise. She knew about it, but she didn't want to know the little bits that were happening and see them as they arrived and that kind of thing. So then on the night before her 13th birthday, I did a coming of age ritual where I performed, I put everything in its own box, and it had the text attached to it, and Chloe could go, just like a birthday party, go pick a box and start to open it, and then I would read the text while she, handled the object, or sometimes it was an action to be performed. So that leads me to where are you now in terms of the work you're doing? Yeah, so that's a good transition, and I know that was where we were going with the book. Because that was the coming of age ritual, that was the beginning of the teenage years. And then, boy, she shot off on her own since then. But I mean, also in those 2 years, I've been building a studio in my backyard. So that, I hope, will be a good transition to, here she is, consumed with her own, schedules and lives and friends, and and then I now have a studio space that is bigger than the little tiny room in the house, and, hopefully I can branch out into some new work. I mean, I have ideas that I don't want to say yet, because that's I can't do that. Right. It'll spoil it. I have a lot of ideas, and I just can't wait to get in that space. It's a great space. Yeah. It's magical. It's a magical space. It really it's like being in a treehouse. Yeah. So, yep, it is. So, and it's fantastic that you finally got it done, and you're getting more house too. Yeah. So we've been under construction for the past year. Right. But when you're done, it's going to be great. And then suddenly you're going to have more house and a studio, more time, and Chloe is going to be in college in 3 more years. Yeah. So I know, needing you less and less and less. Right. Yeah. So Without Chloe was very prescient, and the spaces between us when she really wanted to be part of your artwork, and now she's got her own kind of
life.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not, there's very few pictures of her that I take anymore and that kind of thing. But I mean, once a mother, always a mother. And I think that,
Right.
that just changes. And so, while I'm in the teenage years, it's hard to really digest and then be able to produce works,
About
directly
them,
relating
right.
to it. But I think that in time and a little bit of distance, I will be able to then have those conversations and, really, really get into that.